Hello everybody, welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. The Right Honourable Robert Nesta Marley, the most famous man to come out of Jamaica and the greatest reggae artist of all time, was the first global ambassador of that genre, the feel-good avatar of that sound that made it clear that he and his people were jamming and hoped that we like jamming too. Or the spiritual sage that calmed us down with assurances that no matter what we go through, Zion Train is coming our way. But for all his universal appeal and revolutionary zeal, he wasn't really known for being the most confrontational in his message. But in 1979, he shocked the entire music world with his album Survival, among the most hard-hitting radical compilations of the golden age of reggae and indeed all time. Musicians draw inspiration at different times in their lives, and the most profound example of this was how Bob conceptualized this body of music. In fact, Survival was the first in a trilogy of concept albums that was followed by the incredible Uprising and his posthumous classic, Confrontation. He had lived through the equivalent of several lifetimes. At just 34, he'd been diagnosed with cancer, survived the hit squad that stormed his home, became a global superstar after starting life in the most difficult of circumstances, and I dare say by that time really pissed off and cynical about where the world was going. His first musical expression of that phase in his life was this sublime creation with a focus on African unity and freedom from colonial rule, and a rallying cry to the oppressed and discouraged everywhere. It was so potent that it literally became the actual soundtrack of resistance movements in Africa who played that record in their jungle camps. It was second to the last album released in Bob's lifetime and a perfect musical embodiment of his deep anger with the system. Let's take a look at the Survival album, Bob Marley's Militant masterpiece. The very seeds of this project were sown after Bob completed the grueling world tour promoting the Kaya album, and after he fulfilled a lifelong dream by visiting Ethiopia in late 1978. The 4-day visit to the motherland massively enlightened and inspired him and provided a street-eye view of what Africa was going through. As a matter of fact, he was inspired to write the song Zimbabwe 2 days before he left in the apartment of his close friend Alan Skilcole, a song dedicated to all the freedom fighters in the Chimurenga War of Independence in Zimbabwe. Africa was then being ravaged by several armed conflicts on the continent, including wars in Angola, Uganda, and Ethiopia, and it weighed heavily on his soul. When he got back to Jamaica, the island was rocking from serious economic and social problems, as Prime Minister Michael Manley's government had failed badly with power outages, massive unemployment, and a host of issues that led to a terrible riot in Kingston in January 1979. It was against this bleak and terrible backdrop that he began to write the songs for his next album that he first intended to name Black Survival, but later renamed it simply as Survival, as he wanted it to resonate with people of every color and creed. If anything showed that this album was going to be unlike anything Bob had ever done, it marked the first time that Island's record boss, Chris Blackwell, stayed far away and didn't get involved in the production process in the studio. This time, it was just Bob and young producer Alex Satkin, who had been part of the team that produced the Rastaman Vibration album. So with total creative freedom and driven by righteous anger at his then new Top Gun Studios, Bob Marley and the Wailers would between January and February that year crank out the 10 anthems that we collectively know today as Survival. This album opens with the spectacular, albeit sober, So Much Trouble in the World, a masterclass in songwriting from a point of view of an everyday observer of global events as world leaders make a mess and tear everything apart. You see men sailing on their ego trips, blast off on their spaceships, million miles from reality, no care for you, no care for me. The Wailers band was as usual in imperious form with powerful and seamless instrumentals, but for me, the outstanding element was Tyrone Downey's super keyboard play that introduced a futuristic flavor to this earthy number, a feature Downey took into the next track, Zimbabwe, with even more dramatic finesse. Unlike the opening track that was universally applicable, this one, as the name suggests, was an inspiring commentary in wild support of the independence struggle in that country. This song is easily one of Bob's bests. I can't stress enough how marvelous the Wailers band generally was, but on this one, they really outdid themselves. And lyrically, Bob didn't pull any punches, with a message going straight for the jugular. Every man got the right to decide his own destiny, and in this judgment, there is no partiality. Nati Dobit in a Zimbabwe, Ziggy Top in Zimbabwe, Africans that liberate Zimbabwe, Brother, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're so right. This song wasn't just inspirational, but proved to be something prophetic. As the war for Zimbabwe's independence would end a year later with the rebels winning, and they would reveal later how they played that song for inspiration in between fighting. The next track, Top Ranking, follows in the same spirit, with a stern admonition about the old colonial dark art of divide and rule, which plunged people of different tongues and color against each other. But the next track, Babylon System, is the most underrated song that the Top Gong ever did. A very mellow and soulful Nyabingi-led revelation of the horrible system, which he explained had the sufferers trotting on the winepress for far too long. It gives me goosebumps when Bob cries out, "Tell the children the truth." Legendary saxophonist Dean Fraser, who was part of the personnel on this project, revealed in an interview that the atmosphere in every studio session was electric, with all the musicians simply bursting with ideas and energy. Side 1 of this album ends with title track Survival, a call to arms with an urgency that echoes the album's entire concept. Side 2 opens up with the spine-tingling Africa Unite, a passionate plea for unity of all Africans worldwide, whether in the motherland or in the diaspora, an invitation to come together and join the work to move out of Babylon. The instrumentalists were awesome once again, but in general, the I3s killed it here, in what was an unforgettable display of power and grace. The song One Drop is another of Bob's underrated masterpieces, a slow-throbbing effort with a message of stiff rejection of the global Babylon system. On this one, Bob displayed the influence of contemporary African giants like Fela Kuti or Manu Dibango, with the horn section led by Dean Fraser. This track is very soulful and hypnotic, with powerful timeless lyrics like "They made the world so hard, every day we got to keep on fighting," a concept I believe every single person on Jazz Green Earth can relate with. The next track, Ride Natty Ride, is another magnificent and spectacular call to arms with a slight country music essence, complete with harmonica and washboard sound effects from percussionist Alvin Siko Patterson. Bob's scathing takedown of the Babylon system continued on the album's second to last track, Ambush in the Night. This one showed the sheer depth of his prophetic credentials and songwriting skills. The very last track on this incredible album, Wake Up and Live, is an epic masterstroke of lyricism, vocals, instrumentation, and message with a heavy horn-driven sound, courtesy of Dean Fraser. Fraser himself described the making of this track as an experience of a lifetime that felt like a concert. Bob showed an adventurism unseen in previous projects, with colorful interjections and instructions to his band during the song, like at the 3-minute mark when he does a James Brown-like chant, "Break It Down," to Fraser, who launches immediately into a blistering solo. This album was recorded in less than 8 weeks and was eventually released on the 2nd of October in 1979 to massive rave reviews. The critics were shocked at the high level of militancy on this record, and not surprisingly, it was censored by the apartheid regime in South Africa and became more of a critical success than a commercial one, reaching number 20 on the UK album charts and top 40 in 10 European countries. Survival catapulted Bob Marley's image as a cultural icon and hero to heights way above and beyond his already huge persona. Naturally, it became particularly popular in Africa, with an album cover that was a patchwork of all the flags of the countries on the continent, with a small engraving of the human cargo compartment of a slave ship. All in all, this was a deep and powerful meditation on the ancient struggles of African people, and indeed, people of all color who have all been victims of the oppressive world systems for thousands of years. It was part of the trilogy and was followed by my favorite Bob Marley album in Uprising. I believe Survival is definitely in the top 4 of Bob Marley's greatest albums. A dazzling explosion of militant brilliance from the mine and stables of reggae's ultimate messenger, who felt it was then time to take the fight with Babylon to a whole new level. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.